It turns out that the most fundamental ethical principle is implied by the nature of knowledge, which I establish in Chapter 1 of my book. So let me briefly explain what constitutes knowledge. You may recall that in the video on where ethical principles come from, I said that I begin my book by establishing that knowledge is the result of reason applied to experience, where experience encompasses all human experience, including perception, thoughts, imagination, and emotion. I established that reason applied to experience is the source of all knowledge, including ethical principles. In Chapter 1, I go on to characterize knowledge in the following way. Knowledge is given by the best predictor of our observations, where best refers to the simplest, most accurate model. Thus, knowledge is given by the simplest, most accurate model for predicting our observations. It would take a video all in itself to try to explain this concept, so it is best understood by reading my book. So for now, I just want to give you an example of what this entails. My example is that of geocentrism versus heliocentrism. That is an Earth-centered model of the universe versus a Sun-centered model. No doubt you've heard that the geocentric model of the universe, which dates back to Ptolemy of the 100s, was becoming quite cumbersome by the 1500s due to the excessive complexity needed for the model to accurately predict the observations that astronomers had been accumulating over the intervening centuries. As a result, in the 1500s, Copernicus proposed a heliocentric model, and this was refined by Kepler and Newton in the 1600s. Overall, a well-formulated heliocentric model was now able to predict the observations of astronomers with far less complexity than a geocentric model could. So the geocentric model was discarded in favor of the heliocentric model. Now suppose that two models can predict observations of interest with equal accuracy. Then the simpler model is the one that gives us knowledge, and we discard the more complex model. On this basis, scientists of the 1600s discarded the geocentric model in favor of a well-formulated heliocentric model. To see that simplicity is a crucial criterion of knowledge, notice that without the simplicity criterion, I could claim that the Earth is flat and is resting on the back of a turtle, and that the reason that scientific models don't reveal this is that we are suffering from a systematic delusion. What eliminates such absurd claims is the simplicity criterion. The simplicity criterion tells us that the assumption about the turtle adds needless complexity to the model. It is the simplicity criterion that, in fact, tells us that such a claim is absurd. Strictly speaking, what we're saying is that the claim is absurdly complex. We're saying that the claim is needlessly complex to an extreme. You've probably heard of Occam's razor, but this example shows that it's not a matter of shaving off needless complexity, as if we have some choice in the matter. Rather, it's a matter of adhering to the simplicity criterion in order to save ourselves from idiocy. Okay, so knowledge is given by the simplest, most accurate predictor model of our observations. What this means is that we formulate the most accurate model that we can, and while we're seeking to achieve accuracy, we keep the model as simple as possible. Thus, we seek to maximize simplicity subject to maximizing accuracy. How does this apply to an ethical model? That is, a model of ethical behavior. We've established that an ethical model is a model that informs us how to realize the relational duality of interdependence and intimacy, mutual need and mutual meaning. We've also seen that knowledge is given by the simplest, most accurate model for predicting our observations. Now, when it comes to achieving a goal, the concept of knowledge translates into the concept of skill, which is the simplest, most accurate means for achieving a goal of interest. Or to relate the concept of skill more directly to the concept of knowledge, skill is the simplest, most accurate means for achieving observations of interest. To make this concrete, it's obvious that someone who can do a task more accurately has more skill. but for a given level of accuracy, someone who can do the task more simply has more skill. Practically speaking, the greater the simplicity in performing a task, the less the use of resources such as time, effort, money, and so forth. For completeness, wisdom is the knowledge part of skill. Thus, wisdom is the simplest, most accurate model for achieving a goal of interest. The simplest, most accurate model for achieving observations of interest. It follows that an ethical model is the simplest, most accurate model for achieving the relational duality of interdependence and intimacy. That is, ethics is about relating to people, and human life is fundamentally about achieving the relational duality of interdependence and intimacy. So an ethical model is the simplest, most accurate model for achieving the relational duality of interdependence and intimacy. In providing these highlights from my book, please keep in mind that I'm skipping an enormous amount of detail so that I can get to one specific concept, namely, the most fundamental ethical principle. I'm now ready to tell you what the most fundamental ethical principle is, and I'll do this in the next part of this video.